Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. In our first story, we tell you why age and treachery will always overcome youth and skill. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Lawn Karen. So I make a living doing landscape maintenance, mostly for commercial properties and wealthy homeowners. Unsurprisingly, the wealthy homeowners tend to be the most difficult customers. I could probably write a book with the amount of ridiculous requests I receive. I added a new customer, Karen, real name, to my weekly route recently, and the first visit to her home was yesterday. Using Google Maps, I bid the property for 1 hour of work. When I showed up, the place was a mess. It hadn't been serviced in months. I spent 2 hours making this place look about as perfect as it could. I cleaned up 2 half-dead palm trees, trimmed all the bushes, mowed, edged, string trimmed, and cleaned up all the leaves I was able to. An hour later, Karen calls my company, me, to complain about the work done. Apparently, they blew leaves into the corner of her property and left them. Well, that's complete bullcrap, but okay, I'll entertain the nonsense. The leaves in question were already in the back corner of the property, embedded in the pine straw, as they'd been there for quite a while. Standard practice is blowing out any loose leaves from garden beds and mulching or bagging them, which had been done. Karen really didn't want to hear the reason when I tried to explain this and insisted I send someone out to get the remaining leaves. I went back and got every leaf off her property, including over 75% of the pine straw. Of course, she called again to complain about her missing pine straw, at which point I reiterated the same thing I told her before. I let her know I'd be happy to replace the pine straw for $400. I haven't heard back yet. Update. So a week after the events, I get a call from Karen. She asked if I was still willing to do the pine straw job for $400. I told her I'd have no problem with it, but asked why she'd want to use my services again when she wasn't satisfied with my prior work. Apparently, this lady discontinued services from 3 other landscape companies in the area and was having trouble finding anyone to do the job. I'm guessing that means they all fired her as a customer for being effing ridiculous. I went and did the job this morning, and upon finishing, she was at least content enough with the work that she requested bi-weekly landscape maintenance moving forward. I politely declined, and when she asked why, I told her the truth. Ma'am, you seem to be a bit unreasonable, and I don't have the desire to deal with it. It didn't go over too well, but she paid for the work today, and I left. Anyone wondering why I'd go back for the one job in the first place? It was an easy $200 profit for an hour of labor, why not? And our next story. Boss took abusive employee over manager side, so I killed his business. So I worked at a gas station. I was hired as a regular employee and given the manager position after he found out my mom used to be a few years prior to my working there, and I knew the ins and outs of the store. I was the manager for 2 years, and my boss hired a guy 2 times my age who did not like having a young female boss. He was trying to tell people he was the manager, that he was going to take my job and hire whomever he pleased. I reported it to the owner. Owner didn't do much. Well, a few months in, we get into a fight, employee and I, and he threatened me with violence, and my boss took the guy's side. The employee threatened to beat my butt, and I told my boss I wanted to fire him and hire someone else. He spoke with the employee, and I got bro-coded. Basically, he took the employee's side of it all and dismissed the fact that he had threatened me and let me go. Needless to say, I was furious. 2 years I'd worked my butt off for this man from 4:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. or later, most days alone, mostly 6 days a week. I'd been harassed, assaulted, robbed, and I still stayed. But this dude comes along and you take his word over mine? Nah, homie, I got you. My boss forgot all of his utilities, deliveries, and basically everything was in my name because he barely spoke English, and the company's always dealt with me anyway. He had so much trouble communicating in English, it was just easier to have me do it, and I knew all the vendors anyway because of my mom's job there years prior. Nothing had changed except we added a few new things to bring in business that I advertised and did all the work for, mind you. I canceled everything. I called every single vendor. All his utilities and deliveries were stopped in their tracks. The employee he so loved and respected and such, yeah, that idiot got arrested a month after I was fired. For what? Assaulting his girlfriend. So he lost everything and had to sell the business within 2 months. I feel absolutely zero remorse for it because he put a grown man's hurt feelings over my physical safety, and I was not having that crap. If I had to go back, would I do things differently? Maybe. But do I feel remorse? Nope. I built that company for him. The best I could do as a 20-something-year-old girl. I took all my loyal customers with me, and about 75% of them, still over 10 years later, won't go back there because of what happened. They still come to wherever I'm working at. And our last story. Landlock our land, lose a ton of money. My mother-in-law inherited approximately 50 acres of land seated by a beautiful, well-known lake. She recalls memories of camping, fishing, swimming, and having wonderful times with her now-deceased brother and family. When she and her brother had children, they continued this tradition and created memories that my husband to this day fondly remembers. Her land was located about 5 miles from the main highway, and you have to drive through another property owner's land to get to the land. They never had a problem going to and from her property when the previous owners owned the land. In 1995, a local family purchased the land that led into the family property. The current landowner, who will now be known as SOB, told my husband that they could no longer enter my mother-in-law's land. My husband basically begged the landowner for access to the family property. He even volunteered to pay a yearly fee to be able to drive through an easement to get there. The SOB was adamant. No. My husband's family owns several ranches and have a cattle business on the side. The SOB owns the only feed store in our small town, so we have no other choice but to purchase all of our feed from his store. My husband's a businessman and doesn't like to burn bridges. He's non-confrontational and a kind man, almost to a fault. Yes, we know that SOB had every right to deny access to my mother-in-law's land, but keep in mind that my husband's family is well respected and known in our town. In other words, it's not like we're going to go in there and steal his cattle or loot his property. Being a rancher, my husband is very careful about properly opening and closing gates, and SOB knew this. Now, even as I type this, I get emotional. My mother-in-law's brother passed about 20 years ago. One of his final wishes was for his ashes to be spread on their land at some point in time, the land that brought so much joy and love into their hearts. His children lived out of state but contacted my mother-in-law to see if they could finally grant their father's dying wish. So again, my husband goes and basically begs SOB to please allow this to happen. SOB was very hesitant, told hubby that he needed a few days to think about it. Really? Finally, he relented. We were ecstatic. The cousins flew in and prepared to go and spread their dad's ashes along with my mother-in-law and my husband. Out of respect, I didn't even go because, in my opinion, this was something so personal and meaningful, I wanted to give them their space. As my husband, his cousins, and mother-in-law drove up to the gate, SOB was waiting to open it. Fair enough. As they drove 5 miles in, they were finally there, the land that they so loved and missed. Just as they were about to begin their somber and sacred ritual of praying and spreading their loved one's ashes, they turned and saw SOB not 20 yards away at the gate. Not even then could he give our family the dignity and respect that they so greatly deserved by giving them their privacy. Fast forward to present day. The land that surrounds SOB's land goes up for sale. My mother-in-law requested a surveyor to see exactly how the land was positioned, almost like a puzzle. My mother-in-law, husband, and his siblings were able to find a way to see exactly how they could finally find access to their beloved property. However, she was going to have to pay big money to purchase the land that was adjacent to SOB's land. She finally decided to buy the property. But finally, we can come and go as we please. Now, what you've all been waiting for, the revenge. My mother-in-law also inherited other properties scattered throughout the county. My husband and I built our home on one of said properties. We have no access to a sewer system, so we had to get a septic tank. Then, all of a sudden, we see signs on our property that the Commissioner's Court was going to finally provide our area with a sewer system. The contractors presented their plan to install this system to the Commissioner's Court and the big company that's going to work on this huge project. The project was approved and was given the go-ahead. Here's the kicker. They were going to have to go through our property, where my house sits, to be able to run the lines to complete the sewerage system. Everything was going to be affected if this went through. Our landscaping was going to be ruined. Jackhammering at 6 a.m. was sure to be in the foreseeable future. A fun summer for our 3 boys, swimming, barbecues, get-togethers, was basically over for the summer. It was going to look like a junkyard for at least 9 to 12 months. Even though our home sits on this property, it's still under mother-in-law's name. Being from a small town, Lord knows why they approved this project without her consent or signature. I guess these people thought, this is a small town where everyone knows everyone. We're sure we can do this and she won't give us a hard time. Well, guess who the main contractor was? That's right, SOB. When I found out, I called my mother-in-law and told her. I don't think I have to tell you where our revenge lies. My mother-in-law went to the commissioner's court and demanded to know why this project was approved without her consent. They couldn't come up with even a half-buttered answer. As it turns out, they had to have an emergency meeting and the proposal was denied. They had to rearrange the logistics to be able to complete the job in any way they could, but it definitely wasn't going to take place anywhere near her or our property. From what we understand, the county and the big company were livid with SOB for presenting this without her signature. I'm not even sure how in the world this was overlooked and approved without her consent. I'm sorry for our county, but it cost them thousands of dollars to reconfigure the mapping of the project, and they chose to go with another contractor. SOB was fired. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.